Passage, short story contribution for Orthology Light by Anita Kovacevic, inspired by a passage in Zagreb, Croatia's capital. Part 5. James felt happy as he saw me grow, but I was worried about him. I saw him clench his fists and bite his lip in fury and frustration whenever his gaze fell upon the Backus house. I feared he would not be able to control himself till the work was done. He feared Ophelia would not live till then. Still, she was a married woman, and James was not a killer. The Reinhardt brothers stood by him, respecting their friend's feelings and yearning for me to fulfill my purpose as a passage to change. Finally finished and complete, I took my first deep breath in the brisk spring dusk, and all my stones clicked together. I was built from good, sturdy stone, and no effort was spared to make me resistible to all kinds of weather and disaster. I welcomed spiders and worms crawling into my crevices, knowing they would be my spies as long as I was their shelter. They had already started telling me secrets, and I listened, as always, with an eager heart. My work was only beginning. James invited the bishop and the Reinhardt brothers over for dinner on the eve of my great blessing ceremony. The bishop arrived as modestly as ever, with only his assistant as entourage, and no great fuss or ceremony. As the men enjoyed dinner together, raising their glasses in honor of old Master Reinhardt, Ophelia's screams slashed the night, and my tunnel channeled them directly to James's door. The bishop froze. He had heard rumours, but refused to believe them. His young priest, who was Ophelia's confessional, had tried to tell him something, but the secrecy vow prevented him from revealing the whole story. The bishop looked at the faces of his companions, and he read them with wisdom and severity. He could no longer be still. He jumped to his feet and marched to Backus's door, banging on it so hard that his knuckles bled. The screams stopped, yet the door remained shut. The bishop had his assistant write a formal order for Backus to appear in the bishop's chamber the following morning. This was within the bishop's prerogative. He also sent another letter to the king and queen. The letter would take time, but I knew true justice would be swift. James didn't dare relax yet. He feared for Ophelia's life. I didn't. Not anymore. My spies had already told me so many of Backus's secrets that I knew exactly what to do. The following morning Backus stormed through me on his way to the bishop's, stomping my foundation with his heavy boots, followed by a group of his own thugs, a pitiful attempt at showing power, knowing full well they would not even be let onto the church ground. I waited. Stones are patient. We have time. An hour later, Backus returned. He'd sent his men away to avoid showing weakness. James had gone to work, and so did the Reinhardt brothers. It was just me and Backus. I had him all to myself now. He stormed into my tunnel and stopped. I knew he would. He let out a beastly bellow and kicked my walls with his boots. I shook, on purpose. A tiny lady spider living on top of me, in the crevice right above Backus's head, received my signal, quiet and clear. She spread out her web strand and descended, like an elegant acrobat, down a silky line, right onto his hair. She disappeared within his grey hairs for a few seconds, completely ignoring his rage, his stomping and kicking. When she resurfaced, she climbed back up her web strand and crawled into her crevice with a whisper to me. "It is done," she smiled. Backus scratched his head and went into the house, ready to let out all his rage on his wife. He staggered, feeling dizzy, and demanded some wine first. Ophelia complied as always, with a quick step and without a word. His hand trembled, and he released the mug. Ophelia jumped at the crashing sound and scrambled to clean up the mess. He kicked her body with his heavy boot and ordered her to the cellar for some fresh wine. She scurried away to obey his command, holding her ribs in pain. His heavy hand wiped the sweat from his forehead, and he gasped for breath. The image of the room clouded, and he fell off his chair with a big thump. Backus's lady cook heard the noise from the nearby kitchen. She found Backus dead on the floor, swollen and disfigured. Shock did not prevent her from sighing in relief. Then she called for help. I listened to the commotion and watched them fetch the doctor, but all was in vain. I knew my mission was a success. You see, my spider lady friend may have been tiny, but her venom was deadly. She had known Backus for a long time. She loved to crawl into his mansion and listen to his servants gossip about him when he wasn't around. I loved to listen to them too as they passed through my passage telling stories. Some of the servants had known Backus ever since he was a boy, and whispered of the time he had almost died of spider venom. Another dosage would be fatal. It is useful to listen, you know. I may not be able to move, but I hear things. People talk, stones remember. Several years after I was born, the bishop performed the wedding ceremony for Ophelia and James. They lived in James's house, and their little girl's laughter echoed my tunnel for years to come. Backus's house was donated to the church, which turned it into a workshop and home for the Reinhardt brothers and their families. As I said, I was built for love and with love. I am now almost 1,000 years old, and I am still standing strong. I have seen proclaimed witches hunted through my tunnel, and I dealt with their hunters. I have seen drug dealers stalk innocent graffiti artists, and dealt with those dream peddlers too. My spider lady friend wasn't around for all of this, naturally, but there have been others willing to do the job. Always. There still are. The world changes, but people don't. Some still do horrible things, but others do things for love. It keeps the balance. People still talk, and I remember. Thank you. That's the end.